Agency, one of the most powerful, secretive, and protected organizations on Earth. Billions of dollars in cybersecurity, layers of encryption, elite professionals working 24/7 to prevent foreign spies, terrorists, and hackers from getting in. So imagine the world's shock when that wall of national security wasn't breached by enemy nations, but by a group of kids. Not spies, not trained operatives, just teenagers, with nothing but a laptop, an internet connection, and a dangerous sense of curiosity. They didn't need bombs or guns. They used fake names, prank calls, clever lies, and they walked right into the digital heart of America's intelligence operations. One of them was just 15 years old when he hacked the personal email account of the CIA director. Another posted online threats under the name of a government official. One left behind digital footprints so faint, authorities never even caught him. What were they looking for? Fame? Revenge? A political statement? Or just the thrill of beating the unbeatable? This isn't a movie. This isn't fiction. These are real stories. Real hacks, real teenagers who pushed the boundaries of what anyone thought was possible. And in doing so, they embarrassed the most elite intelligence agency in the world. Some of them were arrested, some disappeared back into the shadows, and some may still be out there. Today, we're counting down the 5 most shocking cases of kids who breached the CIA, directly or indirectly, leaving behind a trail of chaos, confusion, and international headlines. You'll meet the British teen who outsmarted telecom giants and accessed the CIA director's inbox, the American teen who dumped government emails online for the world to see, and an anonymous digital ghost who may have gotten closer to classified systems than the CIA would ever admit. These aren't just cautionary tales. They're a wake-up call, a reminder that in the digital age, power doesn't come from muscles or money. It comes from a keyboard, a fake identity, and the guts to press enter. And here's the thing. They were just kids. 5. Kane Gamble, the 15-year-old, who hacked the CIA director. He wasn't in a secret bunker. He wasn't using military-grade tools. He wasn't even old enough to drive. But by the time he was done, the CIA director's inbox was his playground. This is the story of Kane Gamble, a 15-year-old boy from a sleepy town in the UK who managed to do what most hackers only dream of: breach the personal life of one of the most powerful men in the world. And he didn't do it with brute force or some revolutionary virus. He did it with charm, with confidence, and with a deep understanding of one very dangerous truth. Most people are the weakest part of any security system. It all started in his bedroom. No high-tech lair, no underground network, just a kid with a laptop, a fast internet connection, and an obsession with politics. Kane wasn't your average teenager. He was sharp, focused, and deeply critical of what he saw happening in the world, especially in the United States. He had a cause. He believed US intelligence was corrupt, that the government was complicit in human rights violations, that someone needed to make a statement, not with violence, but with exposure. So he created an online persona, Kraka. It sounded playful, almost harmless, but behind that name was a kid ready to challenge the giants. His first target, John Brennan, the sitting director of the CIA, a man with decades of experience in national security, a man who once ran drone operations in foreign war zones, a man who probably thought his AOL email account was the last thing anyone would care about. But Kane cared, because inside that inbox, phone numbers, private memos, sensitive conversations, access points, and Kane wanted all of it. He started with a phone call, not a hack, not a script, just a phone call to Verizon, pretending to be Brennan. And he was good, really good. He used personal details he found through public leaks, birth dates, partial social security numbers, and slowly he gained access to the account. Once inside, he explored, quietly, carefully, like a digital ghost. He read through emails, saved attachments, took screenshots, and then, when he had enough, he leaked them. The fallout was instant. Journalists picked up the story. Government agencies went into lockdown mode. Brennan, humiliated, had to confirm that, yes, his private communications had been compromised by a teenager. But Kane didn't stop there. He moved on to other officials, high-ranking members of the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, even White House staff. He didn't hack them. He tricked them. He called IT help desks, mobile carriers, used social engineering techniques that no firewall could block. And time again, he got in. He and his online group, known as Crackers with Attitude, began doxing officials, publishing names, addresses, phone numbers, and even family information online. Their goal? A pure disruption, a digital form of protest. They weren't just hacking for fun, they saw themselves as hacktivists, digital rebels fighting back against what they viewed as an unjust global system. But no matter the intention, the consequences were real. Kane mocked the government openly. He tweeted threats using hijacked email accounts. He bragged about having better OPSEC than the FBI. And the scariest part? For a while, it seemed like he was untouchable. But the walls were closing in. US intelligence had already traced the attacks to the UK. They knew Krakow was young, but not how young. Surveillance was authorized. A quiet collaboration with British authorities was set in motion. And then, one morning in 2015, they knocked on his door. His bedroom, once a headquarters of rebellion, became evidence. His hard drive was seized, his chat logs were read, and his identity, once hidden behind layers of usernames and proxies, was laid bare. Kane Gamble, age 15, location, Leicestershire, England. The world was stunned, the CIA embarrassed. A high school kid had pulled off one of the most public intelligence humiliations in years. He wasn't a prodigy with rich parents. He wasn't trained by professionals. He was just obsessed with justice, with disruption, with proving that no system is truly secure. In court, the prosecution called his actions a serious threat to national security. The judge agreed. Kane was sentenced to 2 years in youth detention, a sobering end to a digital joyride that had terrified the most powerful government in the world. But the story doesn't really end there. Because the world learned something from Kane Gamble. It learned that hackers don't need to be adults, or Russian, or highly funded. They can be kids, teenagers, sitting in bedrooms, scrolling through forums, piecing together fragments of public data until the whole system cracks. If a 15-year-old could do this with a phone and a fake voice, what's stopping the next one? 4. Justin Liverman, the hacker who took on the FBI. By the time the dust settled, thousands of federal agents had their personal information exposed. Their emails, phone numbers, addresses, all dumped onto the internet like an act of war. And behind it, not a foreign government, not an elite hacking syndicate, just a brash teenager with a gamer tag, a grudge, and no fear of authority. This is the story of Justin Liverman, the American hacker who made it personal. It started online, like most things do. Justin Liverman was just a high school kid from North Carolina, nothing flashy, quiet town, ordinary life, but beneath it all, he was growing more and more obsessed with the world of cyber warfare. He started going by the handle D3F or ULT. That's with numbers, hacker style. And once he found his community, everything changed. He linked up with other teens from around the world, most notably a British hacker named Kane Gamble. Together, and with a few others, they formed an online collective known as crack us with attitude. It was part joke, part rebellion, but entirely serious. CWA wasn't out to steal money. They weren't after credit cards or PayPal accounts. No, they were after something bigger. They wanted to embarrass the US government, to humiliate the intelligence elite, to make a point that no system was untouchable. And Justin, he was the hammer. While others like Kane focused on social engineering, faking identities to slip through the cracks, Justin specialized in what happened after the breach. He was the one who broadcast the chaos, who turned stolen data into digital grenades. When Kane got into CIA Director John Brennan's personal email, Justin was the one who helped leak it to the public. And not just a quiet leak, we're talking full-on Twitter posts, press tips, even taunting messages. But that was just the warm-up. In 2016, Liverman and his group pulled off one of their biggest stunts yet. They broke into the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. The hack was crude, but it worked. Kane impersonated a DOJ employee, got access to a portal, and from there, Justin helped extract and dump 20,000 FBI employees' personal details. Let that sink in. 20,000 names, emails, job titles, phone numbers, all dropped online like a digital hit list. FBI agents, federal prosecutors, Homeland Security analysts, every one of them suddenly vulnerable. But Justin didn't stop there. He went further than anyone expected. He hijacked Twitter accounts, posted threatening messages, doctored images, used hacked data to launch personal harassment campaigns against government employees. In one case, he sent out messages implying a federal building was rigged to explode. Another time, he targeted the spouse of a US official, calling her in the middle of the night, threatening her safety. For Justin, this wasn't just a game anymore. It was personal, political, maybe even ideological. He believed the government deserved to be exposed. But the thing about chaos is, eventually, it circles back to you. Behind the scenes, the FBI wasn't laughing. They weren't ignoring it. They were quietly watching, tracking, gathering evidence. They worked with foreign intelligence, traced IP addresses, dug through forums, and eventually the connection was made. D3F4ULT was Justin Liverman, 19 years old, living in a quiet home in Virginia Beach. They didn't knock, they kicked the door in. In court, prosecutors painted him as a digital terrorist, someone who had caused real-world panic, a manipulator who used a keyboard like a weapon. Justin didn't deny it. In fact, in some ways, he owned it, said he never believed he'd get caught, that the system deserved to be challenged. But the system answered back, with handcuffs. In 2017, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, a sharp, brutal end to a reckless digital crusade. But here's the twist. Many in the hacking community viewed him as a hero, a symbol of what a single person, or kid, could do to shake the foundations of power, to force institutions to take security seriously, to remind the world that firewalls don't stop social engineering. And while Justin served his sentence, his digital fingerprint lives on. The breach, the dumps, the panic. It's still studied in cybersecurity circles today as one of the boldest attacks ever orchestrated by teenage hackers. The FBI may have caught Justin Liverman, but the blueprint he followed, it's still out there. And the next teenager with a cause and a modem, they're already watching, already learning. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the system will be tested again. The ghost hacker, the kid who hacked the CIA and vanished. They called him White Shadow. At least that's the alias he used. No photos, no fingerprints, no trail. But what he left behind was undeniable. A digital footprint that stomped through the heart of the CIA and disappeared into smoke. No arrest, no mugshot, no real name. To this day, his identity remains a complete mystery. And yet, This unknown teenager may have pulled off one of the most terrifying cyber intrusions in US intelligence history. It started with whispers, forums lighting up, private IRC chat rooms buzzing. Someone was inside a CIA contractor's server, and they weren't quiet about it. At first, it sounded like another teenager bluffing for attention. But then, documents began leaking. Internal reports, training manuals, employee IDs, even surveillance planning memos. The kind of stuff that's not supposed to exist outside closed networks. Cybersecurity analysts were stunned, not just by what was stolen, but how. White Shadow didn't brute force his way through firewalls. He found a way to trick his way in. A zero-day vulnerability in a little-known communications tool used by a CIA-linked third-party contractor, reportedly involved in surveillance logistics. From there, it was like peeling back layers of a digital onion. Each folder unlocked more intel, more routes inward, until eventually this ghost hacker had access to a system believed to be shielded from outside contact. And then came the leak. A 1.4 gigabyte data dump released under a name the world would come to know. Briefly, Project Phantom. The files were raw, sloppy, almost like he didn't care how polished it looked, as if the message was more important than the method. It included pseudonymous CIA travel logs, encrypted server routing maps, and in one chilling document, the redacted surveillance planning notes for a foreign embassy. The government went on high alert. Internal memos were sent within hours. Analysts worked around the clock to determine what had been exposed, but there was one problem. They couldn't trace it. Most hackers leave a signature, an error, a timestamp, a server slip-up, something. But White Shadow, he used a daisy chain of anonymized relays across Europe, spoofed his traffic through compromised school servers, and deployed a self-deleting backdoor. Every time investigators thought they had a lead, it evaporated. Was he American? British? A teenager in Eastern Europe? No one knows. But the code patterns, typing speed, and file timestamps suggested something strange. Whoever it was, they were young, fast, and dangerously curious. In the weeks that followed, fear spread behind the scenes. CIA subcontractors were audited, clearance levels were frozen, some digital systems were ripped out completely and rebuilt. And still, no trace of White Shadow. But here's what made this story legendary. After the leak, he posted a message, just one, on a now-deleted forum, hidden in the dark web. It read, "You think you're watching us? We're watching you back. Teenagers built the internet. Don't forget that." That post was the final breadcrumb. After that, radio silence, no more leaks, no more data, no more taunts, just gone. The FBI quietly launched a probe. The CIA declined to comment publicly. Some claimed it was an internal job. Others believed White Shadow was part of a larger underground ring, but no evidence ever surfaced. To this day, his identity remains one of the most protected mysteries in cyber history. What we do know is this: he didn't steal money. He didn't crash systems. He didn't demand ransom. His message was symbolic, psychological. He wanted them to know even the most secure systems are vulnerable if someone smart enough and young enough really wants in. And that's what scared the intelligence community most. Because if they couldn't stop a teenager hiding behind a screen name, what else or who else were they missing? Hackers still study the leak. Experts still debate how he pulled it off. And deep in intelligence circles, some still believe he'll return. Not for money, not for fame, but to prove again that shadows move fastest when no one knows your name. So if you're listening, White Shadow, they're still watching, still waiting, and still scared. Christopher von Hassel, the 5-year-old who hacked the Pentagon's front door. Most kids that age were learning to read, riding bikes, playing with Legos. But Christopher, he was hacking into one of the most secure networks in the world. This isn't fiction. It's not a myth. It's the true story of a boy, just 5 years old, who outsmarted the digital gatekeepers of a defense-linked system. He didn't break in with code. He didn't use viruses. He didn't even know how to spell cybersecurity. But somehow, he found the flaw and walked right in. It all started in 2014 in San Diego, California. Christopher was your average kindergarten kid, curious, full of energy, and completely obsessed with video games. He loved playing on his dad's Xbox. But one day, when his father tried to restrict access to certain games using Microsoft's parental controls, Christopher found a way around it. What he discovered wasn't just a cheat code. It was a security exploit that opened the door to something far more serious. Here's how it happened. When asked to log into his dad's restricted Xbox Live account, Christopher entered the wrong password on purpose. The system denied access, as expected. But then, he hit the spacebar several times on the second verification screen. And just like that, the Xbox logged him in, no password needed. It was so simple, it was terrifying. Christopher had accidentally bypassed Microsoft's authentication wall, the same system used in various government-linked platforms built on similar infrastructure. His father, a computer security researcher, couldn't believe it. He tested it himself, and it worked. A 5-year-old had exposed a vulnerability that potentially affected millions.